During the 5 weeks of Lent this year, Lori Lineberry, Pastor Ruth, and Pastor Gary led us through a variety of teachings on the concept of love. The word love is, and of itself, an abstract word. It can be either a noun or a verb, passive or aggressive. It can be just a thought or an emotion or an action, or any combination of those. We were guided through 5 books of the New Testament, totaling some 48 verses in all. The chapters of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, provided us with some of the most familiar texts regarding our love of each other, our love of God, and God's love for us through his Son, Jesus Christ. Many of these texts have found their way into centuries of hymn writing, some as exact quotations of the given scripture, and many more appearing as poetic interpretations of scripture. It should be pointed out that a hymn, in its most classic Greek definition, does not refer specifically to music, but instead refers more to a text in praise of God, or, as in other deities, in other cultures. A hymn is not exclusively a Judeo-Christian word. The term hymn tune identifies the music associated with the hymn text. However, for purposes of this presentation, I will use the word hymn as a general reference to our United Methodist hymnal. In our hymnal, under the index of topics and categories, there are well over 70 hymns that fall under 3 subcategories. They are love, love for Jesus, and love of Jesus. Many of these hymns are also cross-referenced under other subcategories as well. But aside from what we know as hymns, there are 2 other categories of music in our hymnal which can contain references to the many concepts of love. The first category, the most obvious of course, is the Psalter, or the collection of psalms. In our hymnal, the Psalter begins on page 735 and contains 38 of the 150 psalms. They are set in a response-verse format, and although the psalms in our hymnal are set to music chosen by the editors, any psalm can also be simply spoken by the congregation or the congregation and a leader. Here is an example of Psalm 23. Without actually using the word love, it is evident that this psalm speaks of God's love for us, even in the most difficult of times. You see that the format contains a musical response, indicated by the red R. Below the responses are the verses of the psalm, with the response occurring as indicated. This format comes from the Anglican Episcopalian tradition of alternating verses between leader and congregation. There are no set tunes or music for any psalm. Composers have been writing music for the psalms for thousands of years in every corner of the world, and they vary dramatically from hymnal to hymnal and from denomination to denomination. The second, lesser-known category of music are called canticles. There are 18 canticles in our hymnal, and unlike the psalms, which are contained in one section, the canticles are scattered throughout our hymnal. So what is a canticle? The simple answer is a song or a chant which contains a variety of biblical texts, unlike a psalm, which contains only the text of that particular psalm. In our hymnal, the format for the canticles, as you see, is exactly like the response-verse format of the psalms, and therefore can also be sung or spoken responsively. As a way of perhaps encapsulating all of the scripture lessons our pastoral staff shared with us during the season of Lent, I have chosen the Canticle of Love, which is found on page 646 of our hymnal. If you look at the bottom of the page, you will see that there are several scriptural allusions which make up the body of this canticle. Unfortunately, we can't be together to do this as a responsorial canticle. I have chosen instead to read, not sing, this canticle to you as a sort of devotion and meditation. If you wish, you can read the entire canticle with me, starting with the response. You can also just say the response when the red R appears, or simply listen. It's your choice. Have a blessed week. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Let love be genuine and live in harmony. Hate what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Outdo one another in showing honor. Be humble and never conceited. Love is stronger than death, and jealousy is cruel as the grave. Floods cannot drown love, and wealth cannot buy it. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Put love above all else. Let Christ's peace rule your hearts. Always be forgiving as Christ has forgiven you. Love is not jealous or boastful, arrogant, rude or stubborn, irritable, resentful, or possessive. Love is patient and kind. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Do not love in word or speech only. Love also in deed and truth. Receive each other in sincerity, find mercy, and grow old together. Love rejoices in the right. It bears, believes, hopes, and endures all things, for love is faithful and endless. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. When the Lord builds the house, the labor is never in vain. Happy are those who take refuge in God. Those who serve the Lord are redeemed. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you.